This is Our Divide Podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the Our Divide Podcast. Today, I'm talking with the leaders of Our Divide, President Brea and Vice President Bolash, about Our Divide's sponsored event Across the Aisle. Across the Aisle was a national, virtual, and high school-run summit of civilized political dialogue that included caucuses and keynote speeches on several current key issues. President Brea and Vice President Bolash are here to give you exclusive details about how this all began and additionally where they plan to go from here. When was the idea to create Across the Aisle first brought up?
Right, so it was definitely clear to both of us that we needed to begin some sort of collaboration with other organizations. So I started to reach out in a process of cold emails and Instagram DMs about a month before the event. But we were naturally left on red most times. Some members from the political dropout and the progressive team expressed some interest in the event. So at that point, the show was basically up and running, and we announced the event on our Instagram feed.
Either Lewis or Lily, walk us through the process of fabricating Across the Aisle. How long was it, and did you encounter any challenges along the way?
Definitely. I think there were challenges in creating Across the Aisle simply because we were such a new organization. We are still a very young organization, and we were really hoping to bring in some bigger places than us and put them all together. And I think overall it was a great success in that arena. We were able to do so. And I want to take the bulk of my response to have a huge thanks for Zia Owens, who is the editor-in-chief of the Progressive Teen. And she really collaborated with us on creating this event and was a great asset in terms of, caucus providers, in terms of hosting and services, as well as just mentorship and providing people to participate. Just overall, all around the board, amazing help, and we really appreciated working with her.
The first day of Across the Aisle was Friday, October 16th. There was an opening keynote speech from President Brea, a Biden or Trump caucus, and an amazing keynote speech from Jack Bergeson, who ran as the governor of Kansas when he was only 16 years old. So let me ask Lewis this question. Take us back to the hours before Across the Aisle started. How are you feeling about hosting your first national event with only founding Our Divide a few months earlier?
Right, so I'll be honest, we were a bit nervous, but I think that we had the full confidence, Lily and I at least, we had the full confidence in our team and the organization and all the prep that we did beforehand to pull something like this off. And it was a very important event for our organization in our organization's history, but I think that we were able to do a lot of great things with it. It was very productive. So we were happy with how it went, and I had the full confidence that we were going to pull it off, from the beginning.
I want to hear both of your opinions on this one. Do you guys have any highlights from the first day? Do you have any moments from the caucuses or speeches that resonated with you, or anything you hope people took away from them?
Sure. I think a big event, our main caucus on the first day, rather, was the Biden versus Trump caucus and regarding the 2020 election. And at the moment we're recording this, we do know now that Joseph Biden will be the 46th president of the United States. But still, having the conversation between both sides was incredibly stimulating. And I had a lot of takeaways from that caucus in particular. I think both sides showed mutual respect for Lewis and I as moderators and the rules of debate. Towards the end of the debate, we opened up a moral character section, and that was definitely when hotter temperaments came out. It was good that we had to cap it at a certain moment, and we were able to somewhat keep the civility for the majority of the event. But I think I especially noticed that our Trump supporters present approached the concepts with a very situational and factual basis for all of their arguments. They didn't really derive from those sort of prepared opinions and ideals and sort of real life evidence to support what they were saying. And I think the Biden supporters definitely took a more personal approach with personal anecdotes and stories of their experiences as an American citizen, and sort of a broader base for the arguments in that way. So both two very different styles of debate. It was interesting that it was so specific across the party lines, but overall, very wonderful caucus and definitely the highlight of my first day.
Right. So for me, I think it was directly after that event, that caucus on Biden versus Trump. The Jack Bergeson keynote was absolutely fantastic. I had the honor to actually reread it and, edited during that sort of week before the event began. So I was sort of seeing how the message was going to develop. And at the beginning, it used to just be about youth involvement in politics, but I think it sort of shifted towards this idea that not only is it important that youth are involved in politics, it's also important that we know that this idea and this goal is a nonpartisan goal, and it's something that we can all agree on. So I think that in a sort of thing that subsequently responded to the caucus, which was more about disagreement, we were able to find something that we could all agree on. So I think that was an important sort of compliment and a great end to the first day.
And I also just want to quickly mention, I think it's great that we had Across the Aisle, and I think it's great that this event was published because it shows how youth can be involved in politics. I feel like there is that stigma, like we're still kids and, we shouldn't really have these opinions. But I think Across the Aisle really showed that Gen Z is just as involved as the current politics as millennials and so on and so forth. So I think it was really awesome that we created this Across the Aisle and we had these amazing discussions. But let's move into Saturday. Saturday's events included a caucus titled, "Is America the Greatest Country in the World?" Lily Bolash's keynote speech, "The Need for Nonpartisanship," and lastly, a systemic racism caucus. I'll address Lily with this next question. What inspired you to want to focus your keynote on nonpartisanship?
There were definitely both public and personal reasons for that focus. I mean, it's right in the title, the need for nonpartisanship. I think especially in the year 2020, we've seen incredible tipping points between the two parties, such as the COVID pandemic and our new civil rights movement that was begun earlier this year. And I think they've really heightened and just exposed how deep the divide between our two parties is. I think we're running completely away from the center on either direction, and it's just incredibly dysfunctional, in short. I think the rest of the world can see it, which sort of leads me into my personal reason, both for my personal growth and my ability to understand and discuss and have dialogue with those of opposing viewpoints, and specific conversations of the sort. And my main focus and interest in politics is based in foreign policy. And I think that when you're in that arena, you understand that the goal is to protect American lives, not to protect a Democratic or Republican life. And I think when you're so up close, in the House and in these legislatures and making these decisions, and all you see is someone across the aisle, I think my personal perspective is much broader and sort of much more understanding of the fact that we need to come together. There's no other option if we want to keep our standing as a country in the world. So that was really what inspired it, and I'm hoping that those who attended were able to sort of make more strides in their own personal lives so we can all get better a little bit every day.
I totally agree with you. I attended your keynote speech and I loved how there was questions. Like people were really interested in what you had to say, which was awesome. And I think it was very well done. I know there was a bit of trouble with the healthcare debate. If you want to elaborate on it, you can. But are you guys thinking of hosting the debate another time or in another event like Across the Aisle?
So I think that the event as a whole was a success, but we would be totally remiss if we were to say that, everything was perfect and that there were no lessons to be had. I think that one of the primary lessons that we learned, in reality was these debates. While they would have been fantastic and they would have been great, unfortunately, some folks from other participating organizations were not able to participate, which is very unfortunate. They were able to participate in caucuses and other parts of the events, but the debaters specifically were not available for some reason. But with that in mind, I think that it's best that we take away the great parts of this event that we had, and that being the caucuses. They were fantastic. They were great conversations hosted by Lily and I, and they were productive, and we had them. So I think that we can probably focus more on caucuses for future events as they're far more reliable and they're also far more productive.
Yeah, the caucuses were
Oh, sorry.
the caucuses were definitely engaging. I know, just to go back to the healthcare debate, it was in there for a reason. It was in the event structure for a reason. Because Lewis and I do feel it is so important, and especially in the span of the past year, the whole conversation on healthcare in America, it's been around for the past 10 years, but it's especially been heightened in the past 12 months. due to the worldwide pandemic that we've all been experiencing. So everything is completely different in that arena, and we were really hoping to get together some viewpoints and spark some dialogue to inspire our own members and anyone that might have been tuning in. So it was very disappointing that our partners, I would say, but to say the least, did not pull through. So it was very disappointing, but we're hoping that we can revisit the topic in the future.
So do you guys have any final thoughts, anything else that you want to mention as we close off this first episode of our Divide podcast?
Yeah, so I think that one of the huge takeaways from our event was that these conversations are possible. I think that we think of nonpartisanship as this distant idea, that this ideal that we can't necessarily achieve, but in our event, we were able to do it in nearly every single, aspect of every single caucus. We had great participation, we had great conversations, they were civil. I think the great takeaway from this event is that it's possible to have this, and it's possible to have this across the country, which is, well, of course, we're a Connecticut-based organization, of course, so we're focusing on Connecticut for now, right? But I think that to know that this is possible, to know that there is a future in this, in practicing these ideals, is very refreshing, very refreshing.
I'll try to be brief, but I think it definitely gave me a lot of hope, both for the future of our organization and for the future of our coming generations of public servants. I mean, I was incredibly impressed by the engagement with my keynote. I was not expecting the sort of responses I received at all, but I'm very hopeful that it was an inspiring moment for anyone who was watching. And I think with the caucuses and just the way that our own members came through and how productive these conversations were, I have a lot of hope for the future of our divide, and that people want to be engaged, and that we'll continue to be a growing factor of the political scene in Connecticut.
To end this episode, I just want to say I hope everyone listening realizes that our divide is a great opportunity where teenagers can connect to other students across Connecticut and participate in well-mannered political debates about the issues our nation is facing today. In solidarity, this was Catherine Welch, Louis Brea, and Lily Bolash. Want to hear more from us? Make sure you check out a new episode of this podcast every month and follow us on all our socials @OurDivide.